My name is James Humphries. I am the Gorilla of Justice on Twitter. I'm an inspector with Thames Valley Police, and for nearly half of my life, I have been a police officer. So that's just over 18 years, a little bit less than half, because some of you will know that, according to others, I get accused of all sorts of ages. But I'm going to talk today about stop search and trying to smooth over some myths, some misunderstandings, and try to give people the facts behind why we do what we do. And so it makes it a little bit clearer and easier for everybody to understand what is quite an emotive and difficult subject to understand. So I'd like to start off by talking about why we stop search. So where's the history behind it? So the history behind stop searches is early 80s. The police had a sus power, which some of you may or may not know, was a fairly overarching blanket search power, which was, and let's be honest with ourselves as police officers, used and abused and caused considerable community friction. There is a whole raft of information out there around how policing significantly impacted on BAME communities and communities that are ones that we as police still have relationship problems with today, which we need to improve and enhance. But they were in the early 80s. I was 5 years old, so I was just starting school. Have we come a long way since? Yes, we have. And one of the reasons for that is pace, which put very stringent conditions around our powers to stop and search. There is a whole list of powers we can stop search under. The question is, why do we feel the need to stop search? So let's look at it for three perspectives. So perspective number one, every single person in this country, or probably watching this, has at some point been stopped and searched. And I'm not talking about police officer stop search. I'm talking about being searched as a condition of something. And therefore, anyone that's flown recently will be stopped and searched at an airport, whether it be through metal detector, enhanced search. I have, for some obscure reason, get enhanced search all of the time when I go through airports, but I know that it's happening to me to prevent something that is perceivably worse. And we all know what that worst case scenario is. We take that down a step. How many people have been to sporting events, nightclubs, where the old phrase is, you're not coming in unless you get searched, you get searched as a condition of entry. Yet collectively, nobody's talking about these, because ultimately I believe that the reason we don't talk about these or apply the same concerns that we do with police-led stop searches, these are conditions of something that we collectively as a society want. So therefore, I want to fly on holiday. I want to go and watch a football match or a rugby match, or a sports event, or go to a concert. And therefore, I want something, and therefore I'm much more tolerant of somebody searching me, rather than there being no explanation as to why I'm searched. There's an understanding of why I'm being searched without having to be explained. Which leads me on to the next point, and that's where communication is important. I think as a police service, if we do a better job of communicating why we're searching, I think people would be more accepting of why we search. Now, I know we get it wrong, and we have publicly got it wrong. On some cases, some significant issues, and you can see in the media now that there is a raft of evidence that where we fail to communicate or a search goes wrong. And I understand that, but what we don't look at are all the successful stop searches. So where I work in Oxford, we have currently a 69% positive outcome stop search rate. That is purely down to intelligence-led, focused, effective, communicated searching. So what does that look like? So firstly, all the data is slightly skewed by the big place that's next door to Thames Valley called the Met. They have a different dynamic, they have a different problem, they are managing different aspects of the policing that we do on a far larger scale. So why do we stop search? And this is a simple answer. The reason we stop search people is it's a lower level encounter to prevent people being arrested. If I can search an individual and therefore prevent myself from arresting them, that to me is a successful outcome. And it's actually, policing legitimacy is a term that's bandied around and used a lot. But what does that mean? That means that if I stop search you, if you go away, and you may not be happy that I've stopped search you, but if you understand that the reason I've stopped search you is the only really the reasons that I've given, which is for to prevent violence if it's a section 60, to search for drugs if I believe that you're involved in the carrying of or supply of drugs, or under section 1, which is something on you that shouldn't have or go unequipped. So if you feel that that's wrong, then you've got a process for complaint, to make a formal complaint. And therefore, if I've done something wrong and you complain about me, that complaint will be upheld against me or my colleagues, and therefore that will come with learning. And then hopefully I or my colleagues will learn from that and move and become better. By this kind of for and against rhetoric where we're constantly banging our heads together, officers become entrenched and don't learn, and the community doesn't get the best response from us as police officers. So we have to be a little bit more sort of free in our ability to people to make mistakes. We do make mistakes. We are, as they say, human. And therefore interactions can go wrong, but it's about learning from those failures. If we don't learn from those failures, we as a police service and a society will never move forward. We want to make sure that people aren't feeling unduly prejudiced against or harassed. We want to target the right people. We want to make sure that we're searching to protect those who are vulnerable. One of the things that my team does is around child criminal exploitation, and therefore the search power allows me to prevent children from coming to harm by removing weapons, drugs, etc., so that they will take with them to continue to go on to harm. Ultimately, it's not about putting a child into the criminal justice process. It's about using the legal powers that I have to protect them from coming to harm. How do we get to a point where I, as a police officer, have decided that I'm going to search an individual? So there are certain grounds that we have to go through. So it's about suspect, believe. The law is very clear around what we're looking for with a search. So there's a section 60 search, which is the blanket power, which I think is the one search power that's causing a lot of the issues, which is there is a signed authority that violence is going to happen, and therefore we're using it as a tool, a blanket tool, and any big tool is a hammer to try and fix all sorts of problems. It's going to cause problems, it's going to break things. So that can be searching anyone. Same for counter-terrorism searches. It's as similar to the searches in airports and sporting events where everybody gets searched. Ironically, some may think that's fair. Some may think that everybody gets searched is fairer than specific. And therefore that moves on to why would I search somebody specifically? So I can give you some examples around why I would search somebody. So I tweeted a video some time back around somebody who'd filmed an incident where a young lad was waving a very large sword around, or machete, at another lad. So that's an affray, you've got an offensive weapon. That was filmed from someone's house by a member of public. So let's think how we could end up searching that individual. So someone rings in through 999 or 101. They pass information, and we are only as good as the information we're told. So that's number one. So if we're told limited information, we're basing our search grounds on that limited information. So if somebody's rung in, and remember, we don't see what that person has seen. So we're told a teenager wearing a hoodie, carrying a machete, and it's a dark coloured hoodie, has run off. In the video, you see that individual run off, but then he's joined by 4 or 5 others, all similar description, similar build, similar height, similar dark-ish coloured hooded top. If I find that group collectively of 5, I could search the first one, find the machete under my section 1 search powers, and therefore potentially not have to search the remaining teenagers. But if I search, but if the teenager with the blade on is the last person to search, I will have had to have gone through 4 searches based on the limited information that I've had to get to a positive outcome. Therefore, when you look at the single data of that search, that is only a 20% success rate with an 80% failure rate. But is it? Or have I had to go through the process to search all of them to find the weapon to safeguard that child and others from future harm? And that's kind of where we're at. You've got to remember that last weekend I searched 3 individuals because I was told by somebody that they were dealing drugs. I can't therefore tell that individual why potentially I'm searching, other than information I've received is that you are dealing drugs, because I may put the individual that's told me at risk. It doesn't mean that I'm being secretive, or maybe perception could be that I'm being dishonest. I'm not. There's provenance in why I'm doing it, but it's description, account, and I know what I'm looking for. So therefore, that's why I search individuals. If I am in an area of the city with my colleagues, and that area has a high rise or spike in burglaries, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, I see an individual dressed all in dark clothing who has a bag on them, and it's the middle of a working week, who realistically is out and about at that time in the morning, what I tend to do is I'll stop and have a conversation with that individual. If the individual doesn't want to talk to me, does that add, or would ask you the question, would that add to your suspicious, kind of your spider sense thinking, well, hang on, that's somebody that's not out and about, they've not given a reason to be out and about, they're being perhaps a little bit belligerent. I build on my layers of rationale and belief for a search, and therefore that's why I end up searching. Allow me to search you. If there's nothing on you, then you can make a formal complaint, and I will have my search reviewed. I use body-worn video. Most, if not all, of all officers in Thames Valley Police haven't issued body-worn video now. Feel free to film me if you wish. That is something that I am happy with, because if I'm going to film you, you can film me. It's open, it's transparent, I have nothing to hide. Some of you may think when you watch video snippets on social media, why do we handcuff individuals? Why are there 2 or 3 of us to search individuals? And there's a simple reason for that. I want to go home and see my loved ones at the end of the day. So I have a duty to protect myself and my colleagues. The reason cuffs go on is because, and trust me on this, for 18 years, some people lie. Some people say they haven't got anything of us. And it literally takes that for someone to pull a weapon out, swallow drugs, cause harm to myself or another. So therefore, I would rather explain why I'm doing something by putting cuffs on for your safety and mine, to prevent harm, because it's easier for me to apologize if I have used force than it is for trying to fix something that's gone terribly wrong. I'd rather nobody swallowed drugs and ended up in a hospital in a coma or worse. I'd rather nobody ended up getting injured with a knife or a weapon. And that's the key. It's the preventative measure. It's like a simple health-based approach. If you can prevent something from happening, it is an infinitely better way of making sure everybody is safer. So off the back of that, safer, safeguarding, the work that we do with my safeguarding team, our child criminal exploitation team, is this. Sometimes that initial encounter, that initial search, that initial removal of drugs, that initial removal of weapons has made that individual feel safer. If I've done it in a way where I can communicate effectively, I've listened to what's being said, and I'm trying to help that individual out of the harm that they are already in, that I didn't put them in, that I have not made them do, but I give them a way out, that means I'm doing my job effectively as a police officer. It's not all about sending people to prison. I want to prevent harm. And I have had on more than one occasion children say to me and my officers, this is their first opportunity to say help. So that stop search then leads on to effective communication. That stop search leads on to a two-way process of helping them out of a very dangerous situation that they already find themselves in. We're not necessarily always the enemy. We're not necessarily the one that are trying to get them to go to prison. If I can get a child out of the situation they're in where others are exploiting them for gain, causing harm, grooming them, sexually exploiting them, making them carry weapons, making them carry drugs. And remember, most times knives are carried by an individual, are used on them rather than against them. That's the key. If I could create a perfect world, I'd never stop search anyone again. I wouldn't want to, I wouldn't have to. But unfortunately, we do. People carry things they shouldn't. People are exploiting others by making them carry things that they shouldn't. My job, and that's the way I joined, it's the way I see it, is to prevent harm to individuals in the community in which I police. That's the reason I joined the police for. That's still the driver behind it. I love what I do. I work with some very passionate people to do the same things. So understanding that, I'm kind of giving a little bit of a plea that rather than criticizing us as we do it, if you think we've got something wrong, there are processes in place to tell us that we've got it wrong. Good cops will hold their hands up when we've made mistakes. Good cops will say, yes, we're right, we got that wrong, and we're sorry. And we should say sorry when we get it wrong. And the important thing is this, we're just trying to safeguard those who are already coming to harm. You may not see that invisible harm, but they are being exploited. They are being made to carry weapons. They're being made to carry drugs. Some of you may say, well, that's a choice that they've made. I would say that's probably, especially for children, a forced choice. And therefore, a forced choice is really no choice. Let us help them make better choices by using the tools at our disposal to prevent them from coming to harm. And that's the reason why we use stop search.